Yes! Finally, I can make a video with the generic title, I was wrong about blank, because I have changed my mind about the anime Overlord after recently rewatching it when all 4 seasons were added to Netflix a few weeks ago. Overlord follows Momonga, a man trapped in a dead-end job with seemingly no positive direction in his life. On top of that, he doesn't really have anyone around him to actually support him, which leads to him choosing to dedicate his free time to the MMO-RPG Yggdrasil, where he actually does find friends and people that he can be close with. Unfortunately, as the years pass, the guild he was a part of begins to dwindle, as does the popularity of the game itself, resulting in it eventually being shut down permanently. However, Momonga refuses to log out and instead decides to watch the game come to its end. Except it doesn't. For some reason, when the game ends, Momonga actually gets isekai'd into the game itself, transforming from his human self to his undead skeleton avatar. Not only that, but the NPCs that he and his fellow guild members had created have now come to life and have thoughts and feelings of their own. And they all view Momonga, who now goes by the name Ainz, as a god. What's interesting is that not only has Momonga been turned into Ainz, but his kingdom of Nazarick has been transported into this completely new world outside the game too. Essentially, he's been double isekai'd. Ainz, alongside the NPCs of Nazarick, then decides that they will make a place for themselves in this new world. Basically, Overlord is an isekai where instead of watching as the hero takes down the Demon King, we instead watch as the Demon King conquers the entire world. Yes, this is the story where evil wins for once.
It's about damn time!
Overlord was one of those shows that I watched a couple years ago, before season 4 had even aired, that I recognised as being good, but just didn't seem like it was for me. And why is that? Well, first of all, it's the actual premise itself. This is an anime where we follow the villains and watch as they kill the actual good guys of the story. Whilst it's certainly an interesting concept, it's one that I initially couldn't help but bounce off from. A side effect of being turned into an undead is that whenever a strong emotion overcomes Ainz, his body will naturally suppress that feeling. This results in him being quite callous and no longer feeling empathy towards the humans of this world, who he now views as beneath him. He will now order the horrific deaths of so many characters, some deserving, many definitely not, without a second thought. And the NPCs of Nazarick have almost all been coded to take great pleasure in vile and evil acts. And truthfully, it resulted in me not really liking the characters of this anime when I first watched it. Not because they're badly written, but because they're just dicks. It doesn't help that I actually think the human characters in the anime are more interesting and more developed. A lot of the NPCs of Nazarick don't really change in this series. Who they are in episode 1 of season 1 is who they are in the final episode of season 4, and we don't really discover a lot about who they are and what they want outside their universal desire to make Lord Ainz happy. The only real exception to that is Sebas, who gets a real chance to shine in season 2. Ironically, he's the NPC who looks the most human. Comparatively, we learn so much about the human characters in this anime, as well as the other races of this new world, like the lizard men. We watch as these human characters interact and form bonds and develop connections. We discover their motivations and desires, and we also get to see them actually change and become different people over the course of the series. And yet it's these characters that the anime will kill off, whilst the, in my opinion, less interesting NPCs in Nazarick, who we don't get to see as much of in the show, continue to live. I just found it annoying that the genuinely good characters that I was getting invested in were the ones that the show would waste, whilst the characters that this anime didn't develop or provide new layers to were the ones that the show kept around. The bigger issue I had with this series that I think everyone can agree with is the animation. I didn't even realise that this was an anime by Madhouse when I first watched it, because it seemed like the quality of the animation didn't match the great esteem of such a beloved studio. I know that before Frieren released, Madhouse had become known as a studio that had dropped in quality when it came to animation, even though it definitely still had plenty of good looking series before Frieren released. But Overlord was definitely below the bar of what I expected from Madhouse even during this time period. This series really relies far too much on terrible CGI, and it really knocks a lot of the wind out of the sails of what should be some genuinely tense and exciting action scenes. Even normal scenes of exposition can be neutered by a CGI monstrosity walking into frame. To really hammer home the point, Overlord Season 1 was released a season before One Punch Man Season 1. There is an undeniable gap in the animation quality between those two series, and it highlights that Madhouse absolutely could have done a better job with the animation in Overlord. Am I saying I expect Overlord to have One Punch Man Season 1 level animation? No. When One Punch Man Season 1 was released, it was a pinnacle of the animation medium. I would never expect Overlord to match that, but I do expect better animation than what we got from Madhouse. All in all, despite some positives, it seemed like Overlord just wasn't for me, and the negatives were clearly outweighing the good in this series. It's the reason why I never rushed to watch Season 4 when it was released, and I wasn't even sure if I'd ever pick up the series again. Fortunately though, Netflix decided to add all 4 seasons to its service, and since Netflix is where I enjoy watching anime the most, I thought I'd give Overlord a second chance. And I'm glad I did, because I enjoyed this anime so much more the second time around. Now, have my criticisms changed? No. In fact, I still stand by them. The CGI is objectively bad. Rewatching the show won't change my stance on that, and the 2D animation still doesn't compete with the best of the anime industry. Although this series does have some good moments of 2D animation, and I genuinely do think that the animation gets better and better with each season. I am interested to see how good the animation is in the Overlord film, which may have been released by the time this video is out. And I still do think that the human characters are better than the NPCs of Nazarick. However, I now view this issue as more of a double-edged sword than a truly annoying problem with the anime. This entire show is not just about the villains winning, it's about the villains decimating any threat to them. I've seen some people complain about the main characters being overpowered, but that has never bothered me, because that's the point. The anime is trying to show true despair, and by having Ainz and the rest of Nazarick be so powerful, you get to see how the good guys deal with something that they genuinely have no hope of overcoming. If the supporting characters weren't as developed as they were, and the anime didn't get me as invested in them as it did, then it would make their inevitable defeats feel hollow and weightless. And I'd probably just be sat there cheering for Ainz and thinking he was cool as he mowed down all these nameless, faceless people. Because I care about the human characters, it makes their deaths more impactful, and it stings when they die. The enormity of Ainz' evilness is conveyed perfectly when we see genuinely good people die horribly, or in some cases face even worse fates. Ainz does consider death a mercy. You feel the same horror as the characters when you see one of your favourite characters cross paths with one of the NPCs of Nazarick. You hope that the good guy will be able to triumph, yet deep down you know that this is where their story ends. Instead of being disappointed that the anime killed off another one of its, to me, better characters, I instead just recognise good character development and writing as good character development and writing. Whilst it would be good for the actual main characters of the story to get a bit more development and opportunity to change, they're all going to be sticking around for the long run. They will get more opportunities to develop and change. It's more important that the characters who aren't fated to last the whole series get the character development they need whilst they still can. Plus, it's not like the main characters are lacking in personality, it's just that what you see is what you get, and there's not much else deeper than that. But the point is, there are some really good characters in this anime, it's just that they're usually the supporting characters. Characters like Brain and Climb. Brain had such a good character arc over these 4 seasons, going from being this arrogant and cocky man to coming to terms with the fact that he can't beat the creatures of Nazarick, and then finally surpassing Gazef at the end of season 4. And Climb? Well, I can't spoil what happens to Climb, but let's just say that it perfectly illustrates that this is a cruel world. I'm glad that these 4 seasons are all out now, because it feels like a big part of the story is now over, with so many character arcs and journeys now complete. And it really did make it clear to me just how important it was that this anime focused on these supporting characters so that we would root for them. So whilst I initially thought the characters were negative in this anime, after rewatching it, I now feel that they are one of the show's greatest strengths. However, what I think is arguably the best part of the show is its world building. This anime has, in my opinion, some of the best world building in anime, because there are 3 levels of world building. First, you have the world that Ainz and his subordinates have been isekai to. As I said earlier, there aren't just human inhabitants in this world. There are also lizard men, dwarves, these dog creatures I forgot the names of, and dragons too. I believe in the manga we also get to meet the elf races of this world. These different races all have their own colonies and kingdoms and cultures. One of the first things we learn in this series is about the different human factions in this world, with Ainz stepping in to lend his support to the first one that he sees. In Season 2 we learn about the different lizardmen tribes and their history, and in Season 4 we see that the dwarves and dog things are in battle against each other. This series is constantly expanding its scope and adding more and more detail to better flesh out its world and make this feel like an isekai that feels lived in, instead of just a generic fantasy place. But then you have another layer of world building with Nazarick. Nazarick came from the game Yggdrasil and is a palace with so many flaws. Over the course of the series, we get to learn more about Nazarick and discover these new NPCs and find out what they were programmed to do. There are so many different inhabitants of Nazarick, and every season peels back another layer of what's happening behind the walls of this palace. And let me tell you, it isn't always pretty. Well, it serves as a great contrast to the relative normality present in the rest of Overlord's story, and shows the amount of thought that Momonga and his guild put into the NPCs' personalities and duties, as well as what each floor of Nazarick would be responsible for, which then leads to the third bit of world building in Overlord, Momonga's life before being isekai'd. We are drip-fed little pieces here and there about the guild that Momonga used to play with, through flashbacks and dialogue to just the personalities of the NPCs themselves. Every NPC was created by one of the guild members, and through how they were designed and their personalities, we can decipher a bit more about their creators. A fact made hilarious whenever Pandora's actor is on screen, as he was an NPC made by Momonga who is embarrassed by his own creation. These 3 levels of world building highlight just how much thought that Kugane Maruyama put into this story, and along with some truly great characters, shows how well written Overlord is. Sometimes in anime, you can see some truly horrific character designs. I mean, you can see characters with some of the stupidest hairstyles and weird outfits that make you go, what was the author even thinking here? That's not the case with Overlord. Overlord has some of the most memorable and unique character designs in anime. Funnily enough, the character designs are the reverse of the character development issue from earlier. The human characters actually have fairly generic, but nothing ever egregiously bad or terrible, character designs. Usually the most variance you'll see in a human character is their hair colour. Once again, Brain stands tall as a great character by having his hair naturally be the best colour in the world, blue. But it's the NPCs in Nazarick that are really impressed with their character designs. Each of them looks so unique, and there's so much diversity in appearance. No 2 characters look alike unless purposely designed to, like Mare and Aura. I remember that the brilliance of the character designs also made my initial annoyance at the shallowness of these characters even stronger when I first watched this anime. Because look at these characters. It felt like such a waste to do nothing with them and push them to the side to focus on the supporting characters. But we've already gone over that issue. The excellence of the character designs also aids in the fantastic world building I mentioned earlier. These NPCs were designed by actual people in universe. People with different tastes and ideas of what is cool or attractive or scary. That's why you have a stunningly beautiful character like Albedo, the cross-dressing and colour-coordinated characters of Mare and Aura, the ice-like Cocytus, the suit-wearing businessman Demiurge, the literal butler Sebas, and then just a penguin as well. Because of course there would be all of that. Because if a game lets you make anything and everything, then you would. I'm just surprised that there isn't some phallic monstrosity walking around.
So big.
The last big positive I want to talk about is the music in this anime. Now I know the Overlord openings and endings are quite popular, but they never really clicked with me. I never hated them, but they were never amongst my favourites. Rewatching this anime reminded me of how good those openings and endings are, and getting to hear the 4th opening for the first time was eye-opening. I love Hollow Hunger so much. If there was ever a national anthem for evil, then this would be it. It is fantastic and really proved to me how good OXT are. OXT are now one of those groups that joins the likes of Aimer and TK. They make very good songs, but most of them don't really click with me. But when they hit, they really hit. And Overlord's 4th opening is easily my favourite opening in this anime, and Hydra, the second ending, would have to be my favourite of the endings. And then the actual soundtrack of the anime is very fitting and really accentuates the scenes of the series. Overlord is a great anime. It has an interesting story with some well fleshed out characters and a good protagonist. I might think his subordinates need some proverbial meat on their bones, but Ainz is a good protagonist. Every now and then you see the last shreds of his humanity inside of him come to the surface, and it's clear how much he cares for the NPCs of Nazareth. He might be truly evil, but he's three-dimensional, and you can understand his decisions and stances on certain topics, even if he is just faking it to make it. He's kind of like Sid from The Eminence in Shadow, if Sid wasn't completely delusional. It also probably helps that I recently watched Haikyuu, and one of my favourite characters in that show was Daichi, who also happens to be the voice of Ainz, so that might have boosted my opinion of him, if even just a little. Unsurprisingly, the entire Japanese voice cast for this anime is fantastic, and they really inhabit their roles, perfectly selling the despicable and depraved nature of the characters when they're butchering innocence, but also perfectly showcasing the other parts of their personality when they're just hanging out or trying to get Ainz's favour. Personalities that are further brought to the surface by the incredible character designs on display. The world building is incredible, and the music in this series is pitch perfect. This anime also features one of my favourite scenes ever in an anime, so
spoiler alert.
But that scene in Overlord Season 4, where we get to see Rena dance and sing like the evil witch that she is one of the most impactful scenes that I've ever seen. She sold out everyone and won. She got her happily ever after. Only in Overlord would that be possible. Watching this scene, it felt like Ainz had wrapped his skeletal fingers around my heart. I felt a literal chill run up me watching this. I have never watched a scene convey true evil better than this, and it easily ranks amongst the best scenes in an anime for me. It also highlights how much better the animation in Overlord has gotten over time, and might just be the best animated scene in the anime's entire 4-season run. Overlord is not my favourite anime, but it is a damn good one, and undeniably ranks amongst the best isekai out there for you to watch. It may have taken a rewatch, but I now understand how genuinely good this series is. But that is just how I feel about this anime. What about you? Do you like Overlord? Have you seen it? Did you like Overlord from day one, or were you like me and needed time? Who's your favourite character in Overlord? Mine would either be Sebas, Brain, or Climb, although I do admit that I have a soft spot for Albedo. And what's your favourite isekai anime? If you have any recommendations, then do be sure to put them in the comments below alongside your other answers to each of these questions. And whilst you're down there, do be sure to hit the like button. It significantly boosts this video in the YouTube algorithm. And if you're feeling especially generous, then do consider subscribing. I might cry if you don't. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.
My lord, we the Guardians pledge our fidelity. The leader of the Guardians, Albedo. I serve and obey.